All right, guys. So let's go a little bit deeper, right? A little more complicated. So in the previous video, we created an app that uh, allows a user to select a group variable and count the number of unique values, right, per group. Now let's add, um, so in addition to counting unique number of values, right, the number of unique values, um, we also want the app to calculate the mean of a variable by a grouping variable, right? An example would be, so here, the grouping variable that the user selected is cylinder, right? So 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, and a user selected AM. So the app calculated the average AM per cylinder group, right? And also it selected the number of unique values per cylinder group, right? In other words, there are 11 cars, 11 4-cylinder cars, 7 6-cylinder cars, 14 8-cylinder cars, and the average AM value of 4-cylinder cars, average of 11 cars, right, is 0.73, and average value of AM for 7 6-cylinder cars is 0.43, and so on, right? So when we do this in the code, so in the summarize function, we have this input $ input ID, right? So this is variables of summarize that the user selected. In this example is AM, right? So we wrap it with all of function and then across, and then we provide mean function. So where is this from? Across and min. So let me remind you of this summarize function. Um, okay, so outside is Shiny. Okay, outside Shiny. So we have empty cars, right? So empty cars, and then group by, let's say, cylinder, as was in the example, and summarize this, right? So this selects unique number of values per cylinder, right? So when you execute this, right, there are 11 4-cylinder cars, 7 6-cylinder cars, 14 8-cylinder cars, right? So that's what we did here, right, in the previous app. Now, what we want to do is not only this, we also want to calculate mean of variables of the user's choice, right? So let's say AM. The user selects AM, and you want the app to calculate average AM value per cylinder, right? So that will be, right, let's name average AM and mean of AM. This is how we write, right? So this is what we saw in the app right here, right? And if we were to do, if we were to calculate more than one variable, right, mean of more than one variable, then what you can do here is, let's say, average value of VS and mean of VS, like that, right? The alternative to this code is to use a cross function inside the summarize function. So here, instead of writing all this, we can use a cross function, and then we want to apply mean function to all these variables inside combine function here. So AM, VS, and then apply mean function to all these variables. So you execute this, we get the same result, right? And does this code resemble the code here, right? The only difference is, instead of um, C of AM and VS, we have all of input $ summarize variables, right? So that's where this across and mean from. Okay. All right. So let's build this app, right? The app that calculates the number of unique values per grouping variables, and the app that calculates the mean values of summarizing variables per grouping variables, right? We can build upon it on this previous app, right? So let's first save this as maybe just another app in the same section of 2. Let's save this. And so here, instead of variables, let's say grouping variables, G, and label, group by, and I'm sorry, we would have the same. Sorry about this. So in the second line, that will be summarizing variables. And what do we want to label this? Summarize. Maybe summarize by. Or summarize, right? Summarize. Choice is the same, multiple the same. Um, and we want the app to hold off until the user selects group by variables and summarize variables. So here the second summarize variables, hold it off, right? And then in addition to, so here variables, this is grouping variables, and the change here is again across all of input. What kind of variables? Summarize variables, and we want to apply mean function to all these summarizing variables, right? So that is all, I believe. So let's try this. Run app. Right. So because we have a required function here to tell Shiny to hold off all the calculation until user selects summarizing variables, right? So we can select cylinder for grouping and AM for summarizing. There you go, the same results, right? And we can add more variables. VS, there you go. We have um, average VS values per cylinder, right? Again, you can add more grouping variables as well. What would be a gear? There you go. All right. Great job. I'll see you in the next video.